This episode contains discussion of abduction, kidnapping, rape, strangulation, and murder. We will be discussing cases with both adults and teenage girls. Listener discretion is advised. Since the early 1970s, dozens of bodies of murder victims have been found along the Interstate Highway 45 area. While there have been arrests made for some of the murders that have taken place in the area, the vast majority remain unsolved. Some theorize that the area served as a dumping ground for multiple serial killers that were operating in the area, but that has never been proven. All right, so we've got a two-parter here, which we used to do all the time. Now we do some of the time, so this time is one of those times.
Yeah.
And it's an unsolved case. So
it's slightly unsolved.
Well, yeah, that's true. And we did have some requests for it. We want to thank Ashley Marie Murray and Brittany Zalatoris.
And of course, we want to thank Mark for writing this up.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're just going to jump on into it. So we're going to venture way down south.
I think we're going south.
This is going to be down in Texas, where everything's bigger. Also, land of ranches, cowboys, rodeos, belt buckles. Large ones, that is.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah. We're going to take you to the Houston area. So with a population of just over 2.28 million people, Houston is the largest city in Texas by population, and it has over double the population of the state's capital, Austin.
Oh, don't talk about Austin.
Oh, no. Tori, I didn't even think about it. And now I can't not think about it.
Well, when you bring
And there are some of you out there who like that song.
Yeah. It's okay to be wrong.
I thought it was understood by everyone. Blake Shelton, he's a gem now. And I thought we just were all understanding that we were overlooking Austin.
I still love.
And somehow, some people are like, I love Blake Shelton because of Austin.
That's like Brad Paisley's first song, Me Neither. Do you remember that song?
Me neither.
That was a not good song either. Yeah. I was like, what a jerk. I hated that song.
Yeah.
But now I love Brad Paisley.
Well,
Austin is just, and now I can't stop thinking about it.
If I have to think about it, you have to think about it. So,
obviously, yes. Taking me down with ya, I see. However, back to regular Austin not singing it. If you take I-45 southeast out of Houston after driving for about a half hour or so, you'll be in or around League City, Texas. So League City is considered one of the suburbs of Houston and has a population of just over 100,000 people. And it sits almost right in the middle between Houston and Galveston, Texas. Within Texas, Interstate 45 runs from Dallas down to Houston, then on to Galveston in the Gulf of Mexico. Typically, interstates with odd numbers are north-south running, while interstates ending in even numbers run east-west. Typically, interstates run through several states and transverse the country, but as we mentioned, 45 just runs through this portion of Texas, and it's actually the shortest of all the interstates that end in a 5. Did you know that?
Of course I knew that.
Of course you knew that. Everybody knows that. It's like common knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some might call that useless information. I call that not useless. Oh, there it is. Yeah. All right, so with this being a two-part episode, we're going to briefly lay out each episode and what we're going to cover in them. So the first part is going to be mainly on a case commonly referred to as the Calder Road killings. The second part is going to get into different victims and suspects. When many people talk about these cases and refer to the killing fields in Texas, they're actually referring to the Calder Road case. So the Netflix documentary series focuses mainly on the bodies that were discovered on Calder Road. But when we say killing fields, we're really referring to this corridor that stretches along I-45 because that's what it is. Since the 70s, there have been dozens of bodies found in the area.
How many times have we talked about it? Like, if there is an area where someone might refer to something as a dumping ground, a killing field, something like that, how is that possible?
Why? Yeah, okay, once the secret's out, why are we continuing to allow it to be used as a dumping ground or a killing field. It's like you find a few bodies there, which is too many, okay?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to make light of it, but, you know, you think, okay, well, maybe it's a coincidence or somebody in the, I don't know, whatever. But you get to dozens.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this not under surveillance all the time? Why do they not have police officers posted up there?
Oh, yeah.
Like something, because it's obviously a spot where everybody is like, you know what I'm going to do? Nobody's going to check there, and I can get in and out of there without being seen, so I'll dump bodies there.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much like a certain park in Baltimore, which you probably know the park if you're a true crime listener. It's Lincoln Park.
Mm-hmm.
And if that name doesn't immediately jump out to you, we'll go over it in a little bit. It's been in the news most notably because it was where Alonzo Sellers discovered the body of 18-year-old Heyman Lee in 1999. And, you know, if you're listening to this case, you probably know Adnan went to prison for over 2 decades. In October of 2022, the charges against him were dropped and he was freed. Very recently, though, in the news, we saw that his conviction was reinstated by an appellate court. But they stayed the effective date by 60 days, so Adnan's fight is far from over, and Hay's family still does not have justice for her murder. And what brought us to Hay and Adnan was through, like, the similarities of the killing fields in Texas and Lincoln Park. So since 1946, there have been 71 bodies discovered in that park. And that number is also considered to be low because of a shoddy record keeping back in the day. It's probably a lot higher. There have been both men and women, and ages have ranged from less than a year to 69 years old. And of course, that park was a focal point in Serial, and it was also mentioned throughout the HBO show The Wire, which took place in Baltimore and focused on gang and drug activity. In 2011, officials began to close off what were referred to as risky areas in the park, meaning parts where higher numbers of bodies were found. Not parts of the park where any bodies were found.
Just a lot more bodies.
Just the greatest concentration.
That's great.
They also cleared land for trails and made new bike trails in an effort to bring in more walkers and bike riders. Essentially, they were trying to get more people and eyes in the park to make it harder for people to dump a body without being seen. Cameras? Anybody? Cameras?
And also, this has now become the community's problem. Like, we need you guys to be out there on neighborhood watch for this.
Yeah, get out here and start. Like, if more people are out there, probably less people will dump bodies because it's just too risky.
I promise I'll get rid of the bodies.
Because in Lincoln Park, it was men and women too. In the Texas killing fields, as far as I know, we've only got women. Mm-hmm. But as a woman in the world, if they were like, hey, come hang out at this park, I'd be like, no.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think I'm going to be doing that. Like, that just feels like you're asking me to either witness some stuff.
Or be the next victim.
Or be it. Yeah, I mean, it feels dangerous.
It really does.
Yeah, it's like how I saw a tweet where they're going to rebuild the Titanic and then it's going to set sail on the exact same route it took the first time.
Did you see that Leonardo DiCaprio? I don't know but he was like, no thanks.
Yeah, like, are people going to do that? Like, no. Yeah, it's just like, why would I want to do that? No, I don't think so.
Have you heard of a thing called icebergs?
Exactly. Like, been there, done that. Leo knows too much. We know too much. Like, there are too many, like, just get security out there. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying, like, that I know everything about running a city. I've only played SimCity sometimes. I was really more on just regular The Sims. I did not do a lot of the city building, okay?
Well, and, I mean, I think that we both did watch some Parks and Rec, but...
Sure, yeah.
You know, that only gives us a little bit of information. So.
Yeah, there's gotta be something.
If
it's a known...
dumping ground.
Lighting... Something? I don't know.
Large dogs? I don't know. I don't know.
Anything.
Yeah.
Robots? I don't know what the answer is, but... Okay, so let's get back to Calder Road. So the Calder Road area in League City sits about a mile from I-45, and it's part of a 25 or so acre plot of land where bodies have been discovered. Today, there is a memorial set up in a section of the grounds, There are neighborhoods to the east that were not there in the 70s and 80s. They've only been constructed in the recent years, and it was a much more desolate place then than it is today. Over the years, it has become overgrown and unused. That just feels like it's inviting more to me. I'm just saying. Back in the day, though, it was owned by an oil company and served as an oil field. There was an occasional mobile home nearby, but for all intents and purposes, it was an area where you could go and not be seen. And this is likely why the killer or killers chose this area to leave their victims. They were very aware of how few people actually go out there.
Oh, God. Tim Miller. I think if you are an avid consumer of true crime, at this point, you probably have heard his name. He is the founder and director of Texas EquiSearch. And it's, we can break it down to TES, but we've talked about them before, specifically in our episode covering Malia Davis, and that's mixtape 189 if you want to listen to it. Whenever there is an unfortunate occurrence of someone going missing or suspicions that there might be a body somewhere, TES donates their time and expertise when they can. When Tim was first called in to assist in a search, they searched on horseback, which is the basis behind their name. So Texas, because God bless Texas. Equa for equine, horses, horse girl here. And then search because they that's what they do. They just search. So
They sure do.
Texas EquiSearch. They've aided in searches for Kaylee Anthony, Malia Davis, like we said, and Natalie Holloway, countless others, honestly. The unfortunate founding of TES comes back to Tim and his family. In September of 1984, Tim and his family were just settling into League City. They just moved there. And when Laura was a baby, this is his daughter, only 6 months old, she got sick and eventually was in a coma for a day and a half with a high fever. When she came out of her coma, the fever had broken, but damage had been done. It had caused scar tissue to form on her brain. The effect wasn't immediately apparent, but eventually she began to suffer from seizures. And Tim said that for about 7 years, they dealt with the seizure problem, but eventually Laura grew out of it. She became an AB student. She loved to sing and listen to music all the time. She was popular in school. She had lots of friends. Then when she was 11, she got the flu, which led to another high fever, and then that led to the seizures returning. And they were devastating. It caused her to have to quit singing with her choir. She missed tons of school. And Tim said that with the return of the seizures, her whole life was stripped from her. So when the Millers moved to League City, it was at a time where, it would take days for the phone company to come and get your phone hooked up. Unless you were really good at planning ahead and you already had it set up and hooked up before you even got there. But for a lot of people, it was just not worth the hassle. So they didn't have a phone in their new house. So Laura caught Tim one morning. He was getting ready to leave their new house, and Laura was like, "Hey, my boyfriend Vernon, I really want him to come over tonight." And he was like, "Yeah, that's fine, but I'm walking out to go to work. Go ask your mom if she can take you to the payphone so you can go ask, Vernon if he can come over." And this payphone is at a convenience store that's very close to their house.
Very
Walking
close.
Distance.
Yeah, remember this payphone.
Mm-hmm. So Tim leaves for work. His wife took Laura to the payphone, and she called and talked to Vernon. And her mom had to go to work after that, and so she told Laura, she was like, "Hey, come on, let's get off the phone. I gotta leave for work." Well, Laura wasn't done talking to Vernon, so she was like, "Listen, I'll keep talking to him. I'll get off when I'm ready, but I'll just walk home. It's not even that far." It's the middle of the day. It was only a half a mile. And of course, she reassured them and thought herself, "I'll be fine."
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is a time when kids played outside all day, and they came back when the streetlights came on.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were thirsty, they just hit up the water hoses in whoever's yard. We drank out of water hoses out of my friends' neighbors' yards all the time. Because we'd just be riding bikes and be like, "I'm thirsty." And we'd be like, "There's a water hose. Let's go get a drink there." It doesn't matter. You lived on water hoses and I don't know what else.
Hope.
Bubble tape or
Dreams.
something.
Right.
So it's she can walk. It's a half a mile. It's the middle of the day.
Well, yeah, nobody thought anything about it. And so the mom left Laura on the phone, and she was like, just, get back home soon. When Tim and his wife got back home from work later in the day, Laura was not there. They thought that she and Vernon had maybe gone for a walk, so they waited for them to return. Then they heard a knock at the door, and they were surprised to see that it was Vernon. And he was just getting there, and he was like, okay, so where's Laura? Nobody knew where she was. She was missing at this point. Nobody had seen or heard from her since the mom left them. And Vernon was the last person to talk to her, but that's the last time anybody saw or heard from her. They spent the next several hours scouring the neighborhood. They did it all night long. They drove all over to try to find Laura. The next morning, they went to the police station and told them that Laura was missing. And in a move that will shock, I don't think anybody's going to be shocked about this. Are you going to be shocked, Trella?
I think I'm going to be shocked.
Okay.
Just kidding.
So the police were like, she's probably a runaway.
You guys, listen to what they said though because I know that the police had a tendency to say that, especially with teenagers or whatever, but normally when you say something like, this is technically a missing endangered person, right? Because she requires medication.
Yeah, for her seizures.
She's got to have every single day. Usually then they're like, oh my gosh, okay, well then she probably wouldn't just take off without it.
Well, they kick it into high gear like we're taking this seriously at this point. Not what they did.
What did they tell Tim?
Thank you for asking. Yeah. So they said, girls her age, they're smart and they can probably find a way to get what they need on the street.
Seizure medication? He didn't say she needs her weed. She has to smoke her weed at least once a day. Okay, kids can find weed places. You're telling me she can find her seizure medication on the street. So she's going to walk up to some guy and be like, do you have any... I don't know what she was on, but no! She can find it on the street. Are you kidding me?
Outrageous. And of course, this made absolutely no sense to anyone. And Tim said at the time that he just did not know what to do. And he didn't know how to get them to take their claim seriously. And at one point there is a Netflix docuseries, it's a 3-part, and it's called Texas Killing Fields. He said that if you ever wanted to commit a crime, do it in League City because they will never solve it.
Savage, right?
He ain't wrong.
I know, girl, I know. But before the Millers had moved to League City, 23-year-old Heidi Fye, who at first we didn't hear her name spoken out loud. The family affectionately calls her Heidi. And I was like, they're just really gonna mispronounce her name like this? Her name is Heidi, but it's a nickname. Yeah. They called her Heidi. So
yeah, I was confused about that at first.
Yes, I was like, rude. She's a victim. You guys need to respect her better. Oh, it's a nickname. Okay.
Yeah, same.
So she was missing. Heidi was a cocktail waitress at a local bar named Texas Moon, and anyone who met her said that she was cheerful, she was generous with everyone she met, she never hesitated to help anyone in need. And Heidi was super close with her family. No one who met Heidi said that nobody had a bad thing to say about her. She did not have any enemies. So it was a complete shock out of left field that she went missing, and it was difficult for her friends and family to accept. In October of 1983, Heidi was staying at her parents' house in League City. She told them that she was going to go walk down to the gas station nearby her house to call her boyfriend on the payphone. The store owner remembered seeing Heidi, and she used the phone. Then she started walking back home. That was the last time anybody saw her. And it seemed like she disappeared into thin air. And within hours, her family knew something was wrong. They went out, they searched all over the neighborhood, they went to all the places she was known to hang out, but nobody found her. They told authorities, but with pretty much no clues or tips about her whereabouts, they quickly ran out of things to look into regarding Heidi's disappearance. And Heidi's family hoped and prayed that she was okay and would be found safe, but that was unfortunately not the case.
So, as we mentioned earlier, Calder Road looked different back then. While there were a few mobile homes here or there weren't a ton of people who would have been in and out of the area. It was a pretty remote area, to say the least. So, the manner in which Heidi's body was discovered differs between different places. In the Netflix series, they say that there were some kids outside playing with their dog. Their dog runs off into the woods for a little bit. and then comes out of the woods with what they thought was a ball, but it turned out to be a human skull.
Can you imagine?
Right? Yeah, can you imagine? Also, like, the number of cases that we've covered where a child finds human remains. Again, like, you know, we talk about that ripple effect all the time, but this is like, you have your victim, you have their friends and family, you have the community at large, people who find, like, all of these things. It's just...
Well, and I feel like such an ass, but I didn't even think, it never crossed my mind until I started watching Evil Lives Here to think about the
perpetrators' families.
Yes!
Mm-hmm.
I was
yeah.
that person, and then I was like, oh, yeah, but they do, of course they have friends and family and stuff like that, but I just didn't, it never occurred to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It affects everybody.
Yes. Also, so side note, and I'm so sorry, I just have to, like, this is an elephant in the room for me. I'm missing some nails, so I'm really sorry about it. I'm trying. I don't know. I'm doing that thing that all girls do where it's like, don't notice them. But here they are.
But here they are.
I know.
Yeah. I know. We're having a rough beauty day, both of us. My
I
eyelashes are gone, and
I tried to compensate, but
you did a great job. Yeah, I got bodacious earrings for my birthday, so I'm trying to.
So beautiful.
Don't look at my eyelashes. Look at these. Yeah,
look over there. Yes, but
yeah.
I know it's neither here nor there, and it's not even that big of a deal. But I've seen some people on YouTube where comments are like, "What happened to your nails?" And so I just wanted to.
Oh yes. Yeah. You might also read some articles, like if you're going to read up on this case, that say that a woman was out walking with her dog who ran off into the woods and then returned with the human skull. So there are some small differences. The outcome is the same. So the authorities were called and immediately conducted a search of the area, and they recovered complete remains. They noted that the body was completely nude, which indicated to them that sexual abuse had occurred. The medical examiner conducted an examination, and apart from the body being beaten, she also had broken ribs, and cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head. And it did not take long for authorities to identify the body as Heidi Fye. I hope they were like, man, I'm really sorry I said she just ran away. Because, of course, they said that with her, too. And they also were very derogatory about her because she was a cocktail waitress.
So what and this is obviously what I think the general consensus that the police had about it, or the media even, they were like, well, I mean, she knows so many people and she works in a bar and, like, you know, like, she had it coming almost.
Had it coming, yeah, that's what it felt like. It definitely felt like that. Like,
well, and nobody, no matter what your line of work is, if it's sex work, if it's whatever, name it, nobody deserves to have this fate. Nobody does.
No.
But yet, throughout history, they have done it. And it's disgusting.
It is. It's absolutely disgusting. Fast forward back to the Millers trying to find their daughter, Laura. Tim learned about Heidi's disappearance and how her body was discovered. So Tim talks to the police and says, hey, there's some similarities here. I'm sure that you're well aware of the similarities, but I'm noticing some similarities here. There's just a couple that stick out to me. They both just sort of disappeared into thin air. They lived only 4 blocks from one another. Oh.
What was the biggest one, though?
There's one. It may not even be a similarity. I might be reaching here. The last place they were both seen at was the same gas station payphone. Not like they were both seen at a gas station payphone. They were both seen at this gas station payphone.
Yes.
Same one.
Yes.
And at this point, Laura had been missing for 3 days, and Tim brings up the similarities.
What did the police say? What did Gail say?
No, sorry, Tim. It looks to you, because you don't know what you're talking about, that there might be similarities, but in fact, Heidi's disappearance was a totally isolated event. She worked at a bar, so do we need to even say anything else? She worked at a bar.
Now, and listen, I mean, we have talked about these kinds of things before, right? Like, don't focus in on just one person. And I mean like one suspect. Let's have one person working on this. Let's have one person working on all this. Suicide. One person working on, is it suicide? One person working on, is it... With this, okay, let's have one person or one group of people working on, is this an isolated event? Let's have another group of people working on, is it... There are obvious similarities.
Obvious similarities. And, okay, you're saying this is an isolated event, and what are you basing that off of? The fact that she works at a bar?
Sounds like it.
That's all you got. You don't have, we know that she was being followed by a bar patron and people saw her leave with him. You don't have that. You don't have a suspect in custody who has confessed to killing her because of infatuation with her specifically, or
a weird ex-boyfriend that would not stop showing up to her place of business.
You have none of that. All you have are the fact that they are both young women. They both disappeared from the same location. They lived really close together.
Well, and the fact that, I don't know if it was a pissing contest because Tim came to them and was like, hey, I'm seeing this. And they were like, what the do you know? Like, ego's at play here. I don't know. Or if it was Tim was a gnat on their back and they were just swatting him away. I don't know. But it's shoddy police work at best.
To go ahead and assume that you know so much about a case.
Yeah.
That, because the difference here is this a targeted attack and the person attacked the person that they wanted to attack?
Sure.
Or is the community at large in danger?
Is it an opportunistic spree killer? Doesn't feel right, but you know what I mean? Like, is it opportunity?
Yeah. Yeah. And if you don't know the answer to that, then you need to take every single possibility seriously. Because, spoiler alert, more people die.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing? So Tim was like, oh my, okay, fine, whatever. You can call it isolated if you want to. Tell me where her body was found, and I'll go search it myself. I'm going to go search it myself.
What did they
And they were like,
what did they say?
That's a no can do, sir. That's private property, so just no, not going to happen. So after 5 days of not hearing from Laura, Tim said that he knew in his heart that she was dead. He said, quote, I didn't have a clue what to do. I think I tried to drink myself to death. I couldn't work. I lost my job. Laura's mother and I didn't have the best relationship, and it certainly got worse. Every time our phone would ring or someone would drive by the house slowly or knock on our door, I got heart palpitations. I didn't know if they were bringing me good news that they'd found Laura and were bringing her home, or if they were bringing bad news that she was dead. I just cannot imagine the pain of that. And for a year and a half, there was no information at all. Tim said that during this time, he was so depressed that he considered suicide. He went as far as to check himself into a hospital for 6 days. While he was in the hospital, he read a newspaper that said there were remains found in a local field of 2 females. There were some kids out riding bikes, and they smelled something really foul around Calder Road.
So now we have 2, possibly 3 children who have found remains.
Yeah. They end up finding a body that had been dead for 4 to 5 weeks. They called the authorities to come investigate the scene, and as they started to look over the area, they found skeletal remains about 6 feet from where the initial body was discovered. So this meant that in the span of 2 years, 3 bodies had been left on this plot of land near Calder Road.
I'm so sorry. I have so much respect for Tim for all the families involved. Like, don't get me wrong, but Tim I'm talking about him specifically in this moment. He had so much self-control to not, and I don't know if he laid into the police or not, but he's got a lot of self-control to not, I cannot imagine being a grieving family, not knowing where your child is and having to hear, well, we can't tell you anything. I know that you think that you're onto something, but you're not. So.
Well, and your daughter's missing. Another body has just been found. It feels like we've got a predator.
100%.
In our backyard.
The similarities that he brought to them, they're not unfounded. It's not like he pulled those out of thin air. He didn't make anything up. It's real.
Yeah, they pulled this is an isolated incident out of thin air and gaslit him.
And yeah, I mean, you have to take their word for it or go by what they say because that's the law.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no recourse. So Laura's mother went to the police station and said that, okay, well, one of these could be Laura. So the police requested a hair sample and dental x-rays. It seems like they requested Laura's clothes to get a hair sample instead of a brush.
Strange.
Just one of those little things that you read. But when the police compared the dental records and DNA to that of the skeletal remains, they confirmed that it was Laura. Tim was pissed. He said, quote, "I blamed the cops. I didn't think they were doing their jobs. If they would have gone out there the first day I asked them to, Laura would have still been dead, but there might have been evidence."
Well, and I think that's big for him to say because he's not delusional about the situation, right? Like,
right.
I think that he understands clearly the outcome probably would have been the same. She probably would not have survived this situation. But he's looking at it very logistically, like, but you could have found the person by now.
Exactly. The closer you find these bodies to when they are dumped, the more evidence you're likely to find. And at that time, maybe it wouldn't have been that easy to use the DNA or whatever, but still, you still would have found,
and you could,
yeah, and you would have found more. You just absolutely would have.
Well, and I think it's just such a slap in the face for a family who is living it to go to the authorities and be like, "Hey, I have not even an idea, but proof and evidence." Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
let's look into this, and they're like, "No."
Yeah, you're imagining things.
Yeah.
I mean, we have no reason to say this, but it's just totally isolated. It was a targeted attack.
Ooh.
And so now we've got two people that we know. Now we've got 3 bodies, but we've got 2 people that we know for sure had gone to make a call at a payphone.
Same payphone.
And by the time they leave this payphone before they make it home or wherever they're going, they are abducted. And they're killed.
And similar demographics, too. I mean, it's 2 women who are younger, like 20-something.
Yep.
Or Laura was in
a teenager, but Heidi was definitely
early
a young
20s,
woman, though. Yeah. So, and it just makes me think about, like the Carly Gousset case that we just covered on the mixtape. So, her family believes that her dad and stepmom believe that she was abducted while she was walking possibly down the road or whatever, because people did see her walking. And there are all these people who were telling them that that's delusional thinking because the stars would have to align for somebody to have picked her up while she was walking. You guys, what do you think serial killers do?
Exactly. I mean, opportunistic killers will drive around and see. I mean, we just covered a case like this on a newer mixtape even. This man was driving down the road, saw someone running and by herself, earbuds in, and thought, okay, that's
what happens.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell that to every victim's family who came into contact with Israel Keys. And we still don't know how many of them.
Yes.
Yeah. They are, by nature, opportunistic. It just needs to be somebody easy to them.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Well,
and unfortunately,
in an area that's not that populated, it can be middle of the day. We did the duct tape killer. He took people in the middle of the day.
Well, both of these women were in the middle of the day.
Exactly. It doesn't have,
but are we taking crazy pills? Because it seems like a lot of police over the years, and I understand that these kinds of things, it's like a criminal profile. You don't know. The term serial killer did not happen until the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, right? Nobody knew that was even a thing. It was not a term. I understand that it takes time to learn these kinds of things, but we're there. So,
yeah, we're there.
Why are we still not understanding this kind of stuff? I just don't get it. And it seems like, to me, the only a couple things you can surmise is they don't care, they don't want to do the work, or they are prejudiced against the victim.
And this case has a little of it all, doesn't it?
Yes, yes. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't mean to smile and laugh, but yes, absolutely it does.
It's awful, and it's infuriating. It's just, oh my gosh. After the discovery of Laura and Jane Doe, because remember, we don't know who this third body is yet, They went as far as to tell the Fyes, Heidi's family, not to talk to Tim about Heidi's disappearance because, again, now they know the cases are not related. So not only did they in the beginning say, because we hadn't found Laura yet, well, she probably ran away. She's going to buy all of her prescription medication for seizures on the street.
She's a teenager. How much money? Okay. Yep. Okay. All right. I'm just going to.
Yeah. Why would you do that when your parents would pay? Like, yeah, just all of the things. And she was super excited to see her boyfriend that night. Anyway, whatever. All the things that lend itself to no, the fuck she did not. But they're saying, well, Heidi, that was an isolated incident, whatever. Now you have found her body in the same place you found Heidi's body with a third victim, and Heidi's disappearance is still isolated. Don't talk to the Millers. Heidi's disappearance and murder was somebody at the bar who was obsessed with her. Obviously, they have nothing to do with each other. Are you serious?
What do you make of that, Torella? Like, what does that say to you? If you didn't, well, if I'm just gonna say if you didn't know the rest of the story, but we really don't have anything. What does that say to you? Like, if you were, God forbid, in this situation and the police said that to you, what would it tell you?
It would feel like to me that they don't want to solve it. Like, that it doesn't matter to them. Because it's looking at something that is so
obvious.
And I know that there are things, I mean, in the true crime world all the time, people will be like, and how did they not put this together or whatever? And you hear detectives say all the time, you have the benefit of seeing it all in hindsight. We're zoomed in here and we only know this piece of the puzzle. We didn't even know all of this, right? You do. I understand that. That's not what's happening here.
Well, no, and I don't think that either of us are saying that before they found Laura's remains and this third body, or the third remains, I don't think that before that they should have been like, absolutely, it's connected. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying give it a chance.
Because the evidence is pointing in that direction, and that's what you're supposed to follow, the evidence.
Exactly. And I know that you hope that they're not connected, and I know that you hope that there's not somebody who is doing this to multiple people in your community. But you have enough evidence to prove that, unfortunately, it kind of seems like it's leaning towards that. So again, let's work on both options. If you have the resources, work on both, but don't dismiss it completely, because that's not fair.
And make these families feel like they're crazy.
Gaslighting, like you said. Exactly.
Yes. And they straight up told the Fye family, do not talk to Tim, okay? Because he's grasping at straws. He's just trying to find answers, and he's just like going any which way he can. So definitely don't talk to each other. It's not going to help.
And that, to me, which I think you agree with, I hope you do because I'm right, but I think that you agree with the fact that that would say to a family member, especially Tim, because I think not that he has more at stake or more loss or more anything, but his is coming after Heidi's.
Right.
So I think.
And he specifically asked them to search that area, and they wouldn't.
And they said no. Exactly. Or can I figure out where the area is and I'll search it? No. But I think that it says to him, I don't want you guys trying to solve it yourselves. We'll take care of it, but also we don't care. And also, I mean, two families like that have been through something like this, at the very least, they could lean on each other.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happened. They finally did get in contact. They finally were able to lean on each other. I mean, we saw that in the Morgan Nick case. She and Jacob Wetterling's mom became very, very close. You see that in cases. And nobody else in the world just about knows what you're going through.
Well, we just covered the duct tape killers, and the families did that as well.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's so important to not feel alone. And we're going to talk more about Tim and how relentless he has been in finding answers in his daughter's case. But Heidi Fye's dad was equally as relentless. That man became a detective.
And did it better than the detectives in his community.
Yeah. He talked to people. They never went and talked to people that knew her and talked they didn't do any of it because they just decided this was a cocktail waitress. And so she didn't matter as much because she worked at a bar. The nerve.
Yeah.
I've heard her work at, like, I just don't understand it.
Get what you get and you don't throw a fit? Is that, you know?
Yeah, like, I just don't understand it. So the families were finally able to lean on each other. But after learning that the remains were Laura's, Tim went into another depression, and he said, quote, "I was the father. I was supposed to protect her and take care of her, and I had failed."
You're gonna cry. Please don't.
A little bit. No, I
Do you want me to do it?
failed. Yep, I do.
Okay.
I would like that. Yeah. Oh, it's just so sad.
It is so sad. I'm sorry. I failed by not doing the right job, by not searching. I failed by not going to Heidi's family's house to find out where they'd found her. If I would have done that, maybe I would have found Laura tied up. Maybe she would have been alive and I could have saved her. Or maybe I would have found her and it wouldn't have been months after the animals had gotten to her. I beat myself up because I didn't do enough while Laura was missing.
It's just so sad to, like, to see him beat himself up that way for, he couldn't have changed it, you know, but I think every parent is like, I didn't do my job because something happened to my child, and it's just so sad. It's so sad. Tim ended up talking to all of Laura's friends and who she hung out with in an attempt to get any information that he could. The police refused to tell Laura's parents exactly where they found her remains. They learned from newspapers that it was the same field that Heidi was found in, but the police would not narrow it down to an exact location. And this is a huge area, so it was difficult, but Tim and his wife got out and walked the property themselves. And eventually they found an area that had flags all over it indicating a crime scene. They learned that Laura's skeletal remains had been scattered over a 20-ish foot radius because animals had gotten to her remains long before she was discovered. So again, that is a loss of so much evidence. So much. And it just gets worse for the Millers. They wanted Laura's remains for a burial, but the coroner asked them if they could keep them longer for the investigation. So Tim agreed because he wanted to know how Laura had died. They actually ended up keeping her remains for another 3 years, though.
Which was, that's, you know that's not what the family intended when they said, yes, keep them. They weren't like, indefinitely. Just keep them as long as
however
you want.
long. Yeah. Like, can you not get what you need from that? I wish I could say that was the worst part.
Yeah.
Of them holding on to her remains. So finally, the Millers received Laura's remains, and there were notes on the autopsy report about exhuming Laura if necessary, which the Millers would have had to agree to, but they discovered that they had only been given 28 of Laura's bones. When they investigated more, they learned that some of Laura's remains were sent to a medical research facility without their consent. To make it worse, officials said that the remains were sent in error. So you think if you're just like, okay, look, so we did send them to a medical research facility, but we didn't mean to. So you understand, mistakes happen, right?
No.
Mistakes happen.
Mistakes happen, but this is not an area where you can make mistakes like this.
No, it's absolutely not. It's just not. It's just not.
Appalled.
And then it turns out that the department made a profit from this. Tim hired an attorney and sued them for $16 million and won, but that was really just to prove a point. All they wanted was their daughter's remains. So they agreed to drop the suit if all of Laura's bones were returned. So finally, they were able to bury Laura and say goodbye properly. That is just like added stress, pain, devastation. That, like, you think you lose a daughter in such a brutal way and the police are blowing it off while she's missing and, like, all these things. That's more pain than many humans can withstand. And then this?
I mean,
gosh.
Again, like, any one of these things would be too much for a family. And if you add up all 947 of them, I'm at a loss for words.
Yeah. How the Millers are still
standing and
able to
surviving.
Function. Yeah. I mean, is just beyond me. It's so sad. In September of 1991, 2 people were again out near Calder Road. They were going through some of the trails on horseback. I bet you can't guess what they found.
I hope it's a little bed of wildflowers.
That would be so precious.
I would love that for them. Yes.
No, they did not. Unfortunately, they found a badly decomposed body in a field.
Perfect.
After a medical examination, they estimated that she had died at least 6 weeks prior, and at the time they were unable to determine her identity. So that meant that there were now 4 bodies that had been discovered in the Calder Road area. So that's Heidi, Laura, we have a Jane Doe, and now we have a Janet Doe in the same field. But all totally isolated incidents.
Yep. Makes
Not one
sense
has a thing to do with the
me.
other.
No.
And that's part 1, guys. So in part 2, we'll get into how Jane and Janet Doe were eventually identified, thank goodness, and other cases from the killing fields.
And again, like you said, 1 body in one area, too many. But the fact that the 4 that we've already talked about, it's not it.
It's not it.
No. So, I mean, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us for part 1. Of course, we want you to spend some time with us during part 2. If you are a patron or subscribe to Apple Podcasts, you will get that second episode immediately. You can go right into it.
It's ready for you.
If not, that's totally fine. We will catch you next week. But thank you so much for listening. Thank you for hanging out with us. Check us out on YouTube because we have the YouTube videos. And we will catch you on our next episode.
Bye.
Bye.